It is written in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 7, that the precious blood of Christ allows us to receive the forgiveness of sins. Let us confirm with whom God has made a promise to give his precious blood, which allows the forgiveness of sins. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26, verse 17. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I am going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. Keeping the Passover is a very important scene. It contains the covenant of the forgiveness of sins. Let's move on to verse 26. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. Here, doesn't it refer to the wine contained in the Passover cup? He took a cup that contains the Passover wine, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you." Verse 28. This is, what kind of blood is it? My blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for what is promised in the Passover wine? The forgiveness of sins. This is the very blood that God promised. What is it for? It is for the forgiveness of our sins. In other words, those who participate in the holy ceremony of the Passover, which was established through the Passover bread and wine, can receive the forgiveness of sins. Who established that regulation? Who made that covenant? It was God who came to this earth in the age of the Son. When he established it, what did he call this promise? He called it the New Covenant, with the meaning of a new promise. Let's see this scene in the book of Luke, chapter 22. Luke chapter 22, verse 7. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." Jesus sent Peter and John. Why did Jesus send them? He sent them to make preparations for the Passover. Verse 14. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, "I have," what? "Eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." Why did he eagerly desire to eat the Passover? Let's move on to verse 19. And he took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup. He took the cup that contains the Passover wine, saying, "This cup is," what covenant is this cup? "The new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." Here, Christ said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood." And in the Gospel of Matthew, he said, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." The term covenant appeared repeatedly. It refers to the new covenant. Without the truth of the new covenant, the Passover, there is no way for us to receive the grace of the precious blood of Christ. This means that no one can receive the forgiveness of sins without the grace of the precious blood of Christ. Many people say, "We too believe in the precious blood Jesus shed on the cross." If there is one same principle of salvation and the principle of the forgiveness of sins, shouldn't there be only one truth? All the churches, the Methodist Church, the Holiness Church, the Adventist Church, and Jehovah's Witnesses insist that their doctrines are the truth. Everything is just the words of men. The only thing we need to pay attention to and focus on is what God says. God made a covenant saying, "This cup is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." He put his promise into this covenant. Therefore, does it make sense for those who do not keep the truth of the Passover of the new covenant to insist that they receive the forgiveness of sins? It is nothing more than an arbitrary interpretation filled with self-satisfaction. God does not approve of it. On the last judgment day, people will say, "Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons? And in your name perform many miracles?" Even though they say such words countless times, God has already made his conclusion. What is the conclusion? He will tell them plainly, "I never knew you." God made a covenant with us, but no one participates in the covenant. Instead, they confine themselves to their own thoughts, only saying, "Since I believe in God, I receive the forgiveness of sins." Jesus defined them as those who do not believe in him.